I am a single mom to a 3-year-old little girl. I work full-time as a phlebotomist, commuting an hour each way. My name is Madison, and I am a miraculous mama.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Miraculous Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Joy, and it feels so good to have our secret out that everybody knows that we're pregnant now, because then I can talk about it openly on the podcast and share things with you guys and get your feedback. And I've been loving talking in the Miraculous Mamas Facebook group and getting advice there from everyone, just because all those women are so amazing. So April is Autism Awareness Month, and last year I had my friend Megan on, and she's just so awesome, and she taught us so much. And this year I wanted to try to find an expert in the field, and I found Hannah Belcher, and she's coming to us from the UK, where she's working from home currently and doing a lot of stuff, but she talks about the differences between male and female when it comes to autism, because I had started reading a bunch about how women aren't getting diagnosed until later in life, because like they've mainly studied the symptoms in males, and they show up, even though a lot of times they're showing the same traits. The way that we process and the way that men and women show it are very different. So that's been her life's work. And she's just passionate about it. She teaches us so much. So I'm so excited to have her on. Before we dive in, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about just being in quarantine and COVID-19, because I know that we had Dr. Camila on not too long ago, but the information coming out is changing every single day. So I would urge you guys just to stay up to date on all of the information, but also be careful where you're getting some of it, because I've seen a lot of articles written that weren't from good sources, or even, the baby that passed in Connecticut, them saying that the baby passed from COVID-19, and the family coming out and saying that's not at all what happened. So it's really sucky that stories like that are coming out, because when you're playing with, when people are losing lives, then it's not something to joke around about or to make up a story about or try to get numbers on. So just make sure that you're getting it from a reliable source. But one thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is breastfeeding today, because when it comes to COVID and breastfeeding, there's still some confusion, but I want to talk to you guys about what the World Health Organization states. So the World Health Organization states that breastfeeding not be interrupted even if the breastfeeding person tests positive for COVID. Biofeedback will aid in creating antibodies for the baby. Extra precautions can be taken while breastfeeding or bonding with the baby, including hand washing and mask wearing. Hospitals may recommend separation if you test positive. However, it is your right to decline. Declining will have you sign an AMA, which is against medical advice. And if you say this, sometimes hospitals may use fear tactics of calling the CPS. So that's something just to keep in mind. But the World Health Organization recommends that you stay with your baby. So immediate separation can cause issues with breastfeeding, bonding, and mental health, and goes against everything science and instincts tells us to do. So if you test positive for COVID, it can depend on how far along you are with your symptoms and diagnosis, and whether the suggestion of separation even makes sense for you. If you've only been exposed, it doesn't make sense to be separated, especially right now, because if you're in a hospital, how many people there have been exposed? If you choose separation at any time, continued breast milk feedings are still recommended. So bringing a pump along with you to have, or using donor milk and offering the baby a milk in a bottle is considered safe, especially if you're still practicing good hygiene and properly cleaning your pump equipment. So if you do test positive and you're having a baby, it does not mean that it's the end of your breastfeeding journey. You still have options. There's tons of support out there. and if you guys want to look at an account on Instagram, Love of a Little One's always posting information about this as well. But that comes from the World Health Organization, and they're saying it's best for you not to be, or you should at least be able to continue breastfeeding. So I've heard of some situations where there's been separation and not even any contact allowed. So it's so important to go into these situations being informed and being educated, because when you are, you're empowered and you know your options and your choices, and you know that you're educated highly on it. And hospitals do put policies in place for protection. And like Dr. Camila said, once you have a baby, they now have 2 clients. They have 2 patients. So they want to keep you guys both safe. But know all of your information, know the research, stay up to date on what the World Health Organization is suggesting, stay up to date on just the information in your area and what is going on. Also, thank you guys so much for being a part of this quarantine. I know that it hasn't been easy. I mean, I feel like it's been forever. It's been almost a month for us over here. And at first I realized like I'm a total introvert, and I kind of liked it. I'm like, oh, I have no obligation for any social plans, which I kind of enjoy. But it is getting to a point a few weeks on that I am getting a little stir crazy. And yeah, it's been a month. Wow. And you know, it's hard. It's like, I would love to, I don't know, there was a donut fest that was supposed to happen that got canceled, you know, just fun things. The weather's getting warmer here in Chicago. So just kind of itching to not just be outside, because I do take walks every single day, but to, I don't know, be involved in life, see family and friends. But it is also recommended, guys, through the quarantine as well, to get outside every single day. It's so important to boost your immunity and your health and your mental health, just to get outside and get fresh air every single day if you can. Even if it looks crummy outside, just enjoy your cup of coffee outside or take a little walk, whatever it may be, just to get some fresh air. Vitamin D is also a huge support for your immune system and boosting. And the best source of vitamin D is from being in the sun. There are some really good supplements out there that you can get as well. If you are getting a supplement, make sure you get vitamin D that is also paired with K2, because that makes it usable for your body. And vitamin D is one of those things that's it's soluble, so your body will get rid of any excess that you do not need. So I've been definitely taking vitamin D throughout my pregnancy. It was also recommended by my midwife, but as soon as all of this started happening, I started making sure everyone in my home's taking it as well, just so that we can do everything possible to boost our own immune systems and to stay safe and smart. So without further ado, I want to get Hannah on to talk to you guys. I'm so excited for the episodes that are coming up this month. I have Julian Michaels coming on. Everybody kind of knows her name. I'm so excited to talk to her about co-parenting and her app that she has. I also am having Stephanie Turner on. She's an actress. And if you guys, I know everyone's just kind of Netflixing right now. So check out her film, Justine, on Netflix. But she's going to talk to us about acting and being a mom and how she switches roles. And she just also has some really good advice. She also shares her birth stories with us. And then I have another educator coming on as well. So we have some really good episodes coming out, and I'm super excited to share them with you. But without further ado, I'm going to grab Hannah. Hey, everyone. I have Hannah Belcher here. Did I say that right?
Yeah, it's Belcher, but it doesn't really matter.
Okay. Hannah Belcher here. And I'm so excited to talk to her. April is Autism Awareness Month. And I know last year we had Megan on, who shared the story of her son with us. And she's a huge advocate and does a lot of work in the community and also has her own podcast. But I was Googling things to try to figure out what to talk about this year. And I wanted to bring an expert on. And I kept seeing Hannah's name kind of popping up here and there due to some research between the differences between men and women with autism. So I'm so excited to talk to you today, because a lot of the things, I feel like people are still told to look for today highly pertain to boys, not girls. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. But before we dive into that, will you just kind of give us a little introduction of who you are? How did you get to where you are and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed autistic with Asperger's syndrome when I was 23. So that was about 7 years ago now. I just finished my psychology degree and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed studying people and kind of how people's brains work. And I was looking for kind of a topic to do on a PhD. And obviously, as soon as I got this diagnosis, it kind of came out of the blue for me. And so it kind of fit perfectly for me that I would then go on to do the research that hasn't been done yet on autism in females or autistic females. So that led me to doing my PhD, looking at autistic females and diagnosis and mental health and things like that. And now I've just finished my PhD. I'm lecturing and I also work for one of our national mental health charities here in the UK.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break because I know that as parents, everyone wants to encourage their children to pursue their dreams and provide opportunities that give them the best chance to succeed. And sometimes that means optimizing your kid's routine, making it more flexible or dynamic so that you have more time to focus on the things that they love. And that's why there's Laurel Springs. Laurel Springs is an accredited online private school for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. I have a lot of friends in my life and family who chose homeschooling as an option. And one of the main reasons that they did is because of flexible schedule. They're able to visit family that's far away. I know my sister, she and her husband live in Texas, and they can come up and visit us for a month at a time over Christmas and whenever it works for their family. Also, you can choose a program that aligns with your academic perspective. And Laurel Springs improves the academic experience of the modern student and helps prepare them for success. And that's such a great feeling knowing that as a parent. Laurel Springs recognizes that each child is a unique individual with their own personal interests, special talents, unique learning style. Their flexible learning program offers challenging and diverse elective courses, and Laurel Springs is accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges and Advanced Education, which means that their transcripts are recognized by colleges and universities worldwide. Register your child at laurelsprings.com/miraculous today and receive a waived registration fee. That's laurelsprings.com/miraculous for your waived registration fee. laurelsprings.com/miraculous. Now back to the show. I was reading a little bit on your story because you dealt with like anxiety as a kid and nobody could really tell you any answers. And like you said, you didn't get the diagnosis until you were 23. How do you feel like maybe having that at a younger age would have helped you learn how to maybe deal with the anxiety a little bit differently?
I think it would have helped massively. So I basically spent my 20s relearning all that kind of stuff that I should have been learning when I was a child. So obviously I stopped going to school when I was 14 because it was too overwhelming, but I didn't know why. I just had kind of these weird physical problems with my stomach and things like that. And it didn't really occur to me that maybe I was just incredibly anxious. School was changing, like it was becoming more social. And I always had some kind of specific anxiety. So I'd get like, at one point I had really bad OCD with hand washing and germs. And I'd kind of overcome that, and then I'd get another phobia or another repetitive thought in my head, or the anxiety just kept shifting. So when I got to about 14, I just couldn't leave the house at all. And I think for me, as soon as I got my diagnosis, I was able to work on how to control that anxiety and how to do those things I'd been fearing before. So now very rarely do I get agoraphobic because now I know why I get anxious going out of the house. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do I get panic attacks in social situations because I'm very aware now of what I find stressful and what doesn't work for me. Whereas when I was a child, it was just this wild anxiety going around my head all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, it would have been a massive help, especially at school, to have someone that I could have seen one-to-one that would have understood autism that could have helped me overcome some of those challenges and maybe prevented me from getting depression and kind of those mental health issues.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so why do you think then that the research has relied heavily on studying males? Like, is there a reason why they studied boys with autism more than girls? And why has that kind of like led to so many young women being misdiagnosed?
Sure. There's kind of multiple strands to this problem. And that's kind of the main thing that my research has found is there's not one answer as to why. I kind of think of it like peeling an onion. So we've all got lots of different layers, and those layers contribute to our diagnoses. So if you're a male, maybe there are fewer layers. Things like socialization. So just within kind of gender studies, findings show that females are brought up to be more connected to others, more sociable, more polite. You know, the emphasis for women often is how to please others and how to behave well. Whereas for males, it has historically been how to be a good leader, how to be independent, how to be strong. I think that is changing now, but historically that's how the roles have been seen. So I think it was harder, given that autism, one of the core impairments is social communication problems and repetitive and restrictive behaviours. I think it's actually been historically quite difficult to identify females because they cover it up so much. Like, we're brought up to mask and camouflage those kind of behaviours that aren't seen as favourable. So males with autism come across much more stereotypically autistic because historically they were picked up first. And then there's theories like the extreme male brain theory that have been quite problematic. So that was based on researchers thinking autism only affected males, and therefore all the science we have and all the kind of theories we have are based on male examples of autism, or even just autistic people who also had intellectual disabilities. And things like that. So there are two strands, and clinicians tend to be kind of have this bias about seeing autism in males versus females as a result of this. So because socialization is different, we appear different. They have this very stereotypical view historically of what a male autistic looks like because they were just more obvious, I think.
So are the actual signs different for male and female, or is it just because, like you said, the socialization, they just appear differently, or they're actually different signs?
So they just appear differently. So all the research shows that actually autistic traits are the same. If you look at underneath that kind of layer, most of the traits are the same. So the same socio-communication problems, repetitive and restricted behaviours, but they're hidden. So whereas you might get an autistic male that maybe does a lot of hand flapping or has a lot of challenging behaviours, an autistic female might have quite a lot of internal problems. So internalising obsessions and thoughts, or obsessing over things that even seem more normal. So like soap opera or celebrities or something like that. So the mechanisms are the same. It's just how it comes across, because many autistic girls and some autistic males as well, I need to make clear, are brought up in a kind of this gender role where they're expected to socialise, or we're given more opportunities to socialise as well because of that.
Wow, that's so interesting. So, because I remember last year, a good friend of mine, she's super awesome. She has, her son has autism, and we were just sharing a lot of statistics about how, like, the numbers at the time, it was like 1 in 40 males were diagnosed. Do you know what the numbers are now?
So the latest that I've seen were similar kind of numbers. So 1% of the population historically was thought to be autistic. When you look at studies that actually look at children that haven't been diagnosed yet, that raises quite considerably, almost doubles actually to about 1.8% of the population. If you look at gender differences, there is still a massive bias. It was historically 1 female to every 4 males, I think, and that is reduced when you include people that haven't had a diagnosis yet. So that goes down to like one female to every 3 males. But also it depends, because when you get autism with intellectual disability, the gender difference is almost non-existent. So it seems like females that also have other challenging issues are picked up at the same kind of rate, and actually the gender differences are kind of almost negligible, really. It's only when you get to that kind of autistic diagnosis, which historically we would have called higher functioning, but we don't anymore, that you see this greater gender divide.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember when I was doing some of the studying and research a little bit, that it was that males are significantly like more likely to be born with autism than females. And you're saying like, basically that's not necessarily true because the research has been so biased.
It's difficult to say. It really is. I mean, it's quite possible that males are more likely to be autistic, but I don't think it's anywhere near the kind of rates that we're seeing the difference at the moment. Definitely when I've conducted my studies, and I've been looking at potentially autistic people, so people, adults that aren't given an autism diagnosis, but when they're screened, they screen quite highly for autistic traits. And definitely there we had a significantly larger number of potentially autistic females than potentially autistic males. So whilst it is still quite possible that autistic males are more likely to occur, I think there are greater rates in females than we realise, or we're starting to realise now, I think.
Yeah. So would you say that females then are more likely to get diagnosed in adulthood compared to males?
Yeah, that's been found in many, many studies, yeah. So I think one of the studies found only 1/5 of girls were diagnosed before the age of 11 compared to over half of boys.
Wow.
In many samples, you'll find like around 80% of the females, autistic females in those samples, weren't diagnosed until adulthood. The mean age of diagnosis for the females in my studies is usually around the early 20s, compared to kind of teenage years for boys or younger. So that's been something that's quite strongly seen in the literature now. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's so crazy because, you know, just even like when you were saying that kind of not having an answer when you're younger kind of multiplies the problem. It's like, I don't understand what's going on. I don't know how to deal with this. So there's so many people who could be, you know, just not having the answers for what's going on. But once you have that answer, like you said, you learned how to cope, you learned like different, like having that answer brings so much peace. So it's sad that like it's being missed so much because people could be getting helped in the tools that they need and everything at such an earlier age.
Yeah, it's terrifying in a way because mental health rates are really high in the autistic population. Like suicide rates are, ridiculously high. Like almost, I think, I don't remember the figures, so I won't try and quote any, but like very, very high. And if you look at autistic females, they're more likely to have mental health problems than autistic males. And part of that is due to this kind of not understanding oneself very well. Like if you camouflage, that's been shown to be associated with depression, anxiety, suicidal behaviours, self-harm. So that's so many vital years where a young person could be getting support and help and you know, learning to fit into their environment, but also for others to learn how to like adapt for them, because it's a two-way street. To then get to your 20s and have to do that, most autistic females will have received some kind of psychiatric care. And so it is kind of a bit of a crisis in a way, like it's literally killing people. But it's a kind of not being seen, I guess, or the links are quite difficult to identify.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a quick break from this episode to tell you about the perfect gift for your mom or another loved one. And I'm not able to visit my mom and dad as much as I would like to. They live in Texas, and that is why I got them the Skylight frame. It is a touchscreen photo frame that you can email photos to, and they appear in seconds so mom can see your favorite moments. I set it up for her, and receiving the first photo was so much fun. I did it when we were down in Texas. So now she'll even message me and be like, hey, like if I text her a photo, she'll ask me, hey, send it to the frame, because she wants it to be able to display it at home. It's so cute. So it's such a great way for your family to keep in touch. I know I have 3 siblings, so all 4 of my mom's kids are super spread out. We're in 4 different states, and it's a great way for us to share moments and be able to, for her to feel a part of our life still. It's a great way to feel close to those you love, even when you're separated. And nowadays, staying in touch with those we love is more important than ever. And the easiest way to do that is with Skylight, a photo frame that you can email photos to anytime from anywhere. Sending in the photos is effortless, and everyone in your family can just email photos right to the Skylight, and they pop up in home in seconds. It has a black frame, so it looks like a real photo frame, and that adds a beautiful touch to it. The Skylight frame has a gorgeous 10-inch touch screen, and you can swipe through the photos with your finger. You can even tap to thank the person who sent you a photo. Every single time I send my photo to my mom, I immediately get back, someone liked your photo, because she like, I swear she waits for photos to come in. And then as soon as she does, she's tapping them and liking them. It's a great gift. Plus it's 100% satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't love your Skylight, they'll offer you a full refund. Like I said, my family loves it. My mom loves it. It's a great way for her to keep in touch with her grandkids and great grandkids and children. I have such a huge family. And now I have a great offer for you guys to try it as well. You can add $10 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/mama and enter code MAMA. This is seriously the perfect Mother's Day gift. And Mother's Day is just around the corner. I just thought of that. Oh my gosh. I totally forgot. Time is flying by, guys. So get this frame right now for your moms. That's right. To get $10 off your purchase of a Skylight frame, just go to skylightframe.com/mama and enter code MAMA. That's skylightframe.com/mama. Now back to the show. So what are, I guess, is there, I know like there's a set of things to look for in kids to start early intervention. But as you were saying, it shows up so differently in males and females because they're taught different. So the girls, a kid could have it, but be internalizing things and dealing with it in a different way. So is there a set of things to look for in females at a young age to possibly get them in early intervention or get them somewhere where they could see if that's a possibility?
Sure. So things like selective mutism. So quite a few autistic females will go selectively mute. So that's when they are too anxious to speak. There'll be evidence, quite often a lot of anxiety, just general quietness. Playground-wise, they kind of look like they're playing with other children, but if you look a little bit deeper, you'll notice they're always on the kind of peripheral of their friendship groups, and they kind of jump from one to the other and seem to be kind of isolating themselves still. As you get older, like teenage years, things like self-harming or like difficulties with mental health is definitely a massive factor. You might notice autistic females copy a lot, so part of this camouflaging is mimicking those around them. So learning to kind of copy the behaviors. They might have one very intense best friend that they're copying loads of their behaviors for, and you're finding that they're really anxious in other areas. Being anxious at school, but then really okay at home, really calm. Meltdowns, so seeming to get overwhelmed and having these kind of distressed, intense fits during when they've been overwhelmed by something is a key sign. Those kind of, it's not a tantrum, but those kind of periods where you think, where has this come from? Sensory issues. So a lot of autistic children have problems with food. So that's the same for autistic females. They might be a bit particular about food or textures. smells, a bit sensitive to those things. Obsessions, so they might not be obvious, but you'll probably find them somewhere along the line. It might be that they're really obsessive about keeping their dolls neat, or it might be they're really obsessive about collecting something, or having things in a certain way, not being very good with change if something changes, or family occasions and big kind of group gatherings. So you'll notice like many of them, the traits are very similar, but they just kind of present slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like a typical autistic male, and the kind of rigid, repetitive behaviours are much more obvious. They tend to be more isolated in the playgrounds and playing on their own a lot, not attempting to fit in with others. Challenging behaviours, they have more challenging behaviours like ADHD, things like that. So I guess the autistic female just might seem very quiet and anxious generally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if there's somebody who may think that their daughter has autism, I know that because I got to think of how to word this right. Like, because so many have gone misdiagnosed, like, would you follow the exact same steps for your son as you would your daughter? And like, what happens when somebody's like, oh, well, I don't really think it's this.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that's so hard. I mean, you're not like hoping that's necessarily what your child has, but you want answers for certain things. And if it is something that is commonly misdiagnosed, like for moms listening, if they're like, you know, I thought this is what my daughter has, and they keep telling me that she's not autistic and I don't know what to do, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm not going to lie, it's difficult. Clinicians, professionals are still very biased into thinking, like, this very stereotypical male view of autism. Like, I still hear about women that clearly are autistic, they identify as autistic, they go to their GP and they get told, oh, you're married, you can't be autistic, or you've got a job, you can't be autistic. So it is a battle. Some parents don't find it a battle, they get through very easily. But if I was a mother of an autistic, or a daughter I thought might be autistic, I think preparing yourself is the best answer. So cluing yourself up on loads of research, like taking it with you to your doctor, having that on hand to be like, look, I've seen in my daughter, this research is saying this, and I really want to insist that we get this followed up. And I think making sure that is followed up only by a psychiatrist, psychologist that specialises in autism, so someone that understands autism for both males and females. I know it might be different in the US, but we have a lot of issues here in the UK because we have this NHS system, which means we don't always get the kind of flexibility and choice of who we see. You kind of see who your local doctor is, and you get sent or referred to who your local consultant is. But you always have rights to complain, and you always have rights to ask for second opinions. So I think if I was a mother of a daughter, I would prepare myself for that battle, hope I don't get it, but know that it's really important to follow it through, because the benefits to your daughter now will be amazing compared to if you leave it until she has to find out as an adult. Mm-hmm. Steps should be the same in theory. Like, you go to your doctor, you get referred for an assessment. The assessment should all be the same. I think it's just about ensuring that you have someone that actually understands it for autistic females, because they don't all yet.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I feel like I wish there was a database that told you which people understood.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just word of mouth. So I know in the UK, often parents will ask, who should I go to? And I have a certain clinicians that I know are very clued up on it, and they might be private rather than NHS. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I can flag that up. And people, if you speak to people, like go on Facebook group, autism Facebook groups, and ask, people usually know others where they've got their children diagnosed. And it's good to go on those recommendations, because, yeah, it's just so important to find the right person that understands your child and not someone that brushes them off, because then it'll be really hard to get back into that system.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that could be the big struggle with parents, you know, is like searching for those answers. And I've heard stories too, that if the child didn't have very clear-cut symptoms of like textbook, oh yes, check, they check all the boxes, okay, we can move on, that there really hasn't been answers. And I know that the United States, I believe we prescribe the most ADHD drugs in the world per capita. So, I mean, who knows how many things are being like, oh, well, he just has this or she just has this, and just like covered with other things instead of getting the other tools that maybe they would need if they knew that the problem like wasn't just attention deficit disorder, that they're, they like your child has autism and these are different things you can do to equip them and tools to help them instead of just this.
Yeah, because I mean, the fact is some children do have problems that are associated with any medication. But if we're thinking about autism, that's very rarely the case. So a lot of autistic teenagers often get put on like antipsychotic pills or antidepressants, when actually if the environment was just a little bit more better adapted to their needs, none of that would be, needed. Definitely things like ADHD and autism really common to co-occur together. But actually a lot of the ADHD symptoms seen in autism could be better controlled if the situation was a little bit more planned and a little bit less chaotic. It's understanding those sensory needs for a child as well and looking at those things first. But doctors and that are definitely keen to medicalise very quickly before they properly understand the issue. I think that's important because autistic people are found to be more sensitive to medication, less tolerant of antidepressants and things like that, and hormonal pills and things like that.
Yeah. What would you say, I guess, to destigmatize autism? So if somebody's like, oh no, my child doesn't have autism, or, that maybe there's certain stigmas around it that necessarily shouldn't be there. I mean, I feel like it's talked about more, which is really important, and more people share their stories, especially in adulthood. The people who are getting diagnosed in adulthood are sharing their stories because they wish they knew when they were younger. So do you have any, just anything to offer to help kind of destigmatize it if there's anyone listening who maybe thinks but is kind of like fighting that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a divide in the community between autistic people and parents. And difficulty is parents view it very much negatively as my child has something that makes them different. And it's not the expectations they had for that child. And I guess if you have a child that's unhappy a lot of the time as well, it's very easy to think, I wish I could just get rid of this thing. But actually, like, happiness comes in all different shapes and sizes. Autistic people can be just as happy and content with their lives and fulfilling as long as their lives are adapted for their needs. So, and I know, like, there's been a few studies lately, including my own one that I've just finished, have shown that when people don't know someone's autistic, they rate them more negatively in terms of, like, how they're coming across socially and their behavioural intentions towards them. But when they know they're autistic, they don't. So I think part of it is that awareness raising, is understanding that autism isn't something to be ashamed of. It's not something to worry about getting a diagnosis of. If anything, it's a good thing to get your child that diagnosis. Like, if I had a child that was having difficulties, I would hope for something that, like, an answer basically, rather than thinking, oh no, I hope they don't have that. That'd be awful. I can't cure that. Because many autistic adults go on to live very fulfilled, successful lives when they're supported, like just as successful as a non-autistic person, if not more, because their talents and strengths are so specific and strong. If you can hone on those, they can do great things. So I guess stigma is about not being ashamed, like not seeing yourselves as a victim, but seeing yourselves as someone that's been given a great kind of a challenge, but also a kind of gift in a way to work on. And it's about sharing that with others. Like, I think the more people that know you're autistic, the likely they are to have those kind of stigmatized views about you, because they learn who you are and then they associate that with the autism and they think, oh, actually, what I thought about autism isn't true because this person doesn't fit that stereotype. And that is what the research is showing, that when people know others are autistic, they're much nicer and adaptable, and the communication is a lot easier between them. So parents, I guess, I know it's really hard. Like, I've not been a parent, so I can only imagine having those kind of difficulties with a child and not knowing what to do. But I think you've just got to find the positives in it and hone in on those and make things comfortable for that child. Like, their lives aren't going to be how you predicted, or they may not behave in the same way that a non-autistic child does, but that's okay for them. It doesn't matter if they don't like doing certain things. I think we're very set in society with what we should and shouldn't do, and we need to kind of like open that up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're saying like your kid might not, be exactly like their life might not be what you pictured, I feel like that's so true in general though. I did a lot of things that my mom did not want me to do, but it is, I think just even putting those expectations on your child in general can be very unhealthy, and finding out what your kids' gifts and passions and talents are and nourishing those can be so helpful, because not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody interprets the same way. Not everybody enjoys going to school. Not everybody enjoys, different things. Yeah. And it's like, you shouldn't force them to like something if it's not, there's like clearly codes of ethics of how you should behave and things like that. But, forcing your kid to do a sport every single year that they clearly hate and don't enjoy, I don't think that that's necessarily right,
Yeah, I read a parent the other day that was getting really stressed out because obviously we're in lockdown at the moment, and so for autistic kids that's been really difficult. Yeah. And so this girl was really struggling with the change in routine, and this mum's biggest concern was that she wouldn't dress out of her pajamas every day. And everyone was like, well, why does she need to? Why can't she just live in her pajamas, really? Like, it's taking out those expectations of what we expect from people and actually focusing on different things. Like, that child will be happy if she's left in her pajamas and probably be able to get on with her schoolwork better from home, being comfortable. And even, I know, like, so autism comes with varying degrees of intellectual disability. Like, many have none and some people have quite severe. So I know this is very different for parents depending on the needs of that child, and that if you do have a child with severe intellectual disabilities, and that can be really difficult. But we're now, because the diagnostic categories have kind of separated ID from autism, the issue is really tackling the ID and not the autism. So many kids have been written off because they don't speak, and now they're finding new and really exciting ways for them to communicate differently, and finding out that actually these kids weren't just, really intellectually behind, they just communicate differently. And I think, it's just learning a new norm, and we don't like new things. Like, just as a species, we're not very good with like changes and new things. But I think, when you open up your world to autism, the world becomes a better place in a way, because you accept things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I loved how you put that though, because, people do like, just that it's not like, oh, this kid couldn't communicate. They just communicate differently, and they know what's going on, and it's sad because, like, looking back then, just people were probably so mistreated because they didn't communicate the same, or because they learned differently, and people thought, oh, well, they just don't know, and they did, and they were just mistreated in history. So I hate like thinking about those things, because it's like, oh, like, But
no, it's pretty awful to think, I think. Especially some of the earlier interventions that were developed for autism were just about punishing like behaviors that weren't normal. I think that's pretty horrible in a way. Like, harness the behaviors that are there for good, because they're not hurting anyone and they're helping that person.
Yeah, for sure. So you had mentioned before to have parents kind of equip themselves with research if they're going in. Do you have any great resources that would be good for parents to check out? And what would your kind of list of resources entail?
I have a few. So I tend to signpost to certain books. So there's some really great books on autistic females out there at the moment. So Rudy Simone did one on Asperger girls, I think. That's a really great book. And at the end of it has a chart of signs for autistic females, which I think is a really helpful thing to take with you to a doctor's surgery and say, look, these are the things I've highlighted. There's some really great papers now on literature surveys of kind of gender differences in autism, and I definitely have a look at some of those. Certainly papers by teams here, for example, Will Mandy and Laura Hull have done some really great work on camouflaging in females and what that looks like. And I would also just check out kind of the national charities in the area. So here we've got the National Autism Society, and they tend to upload quite a few different resources for understanding autism in different kind of cohorts of people. So they have stuff on autistic females too. To be honest, like if you just Google it, you will get pages and pages of worthwhile resources. There's quite a lot out there now, thankfully. When I started this search, there was hardly anything. It was really hard to kind of find much at all in the area. And now it's become such a popular topic. It's almost like the kind of medical and professional area hasn't caught up to what we all know. So online, you would think that we completely understand now the differences between autistic males and autistic females, yet it's still not quite translating over. It's a really weird kind of phenomenon that we have all these books from autistic women, we have all these resources, and yet you can still go into a doctor's surgery and them tell you you're not autistic because you're making eye contact. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is crazy. It's like, come on.
Yeah. Like Google it. It's right there for you.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for taking time to spend with us and to help us learn. Is there anything that you're working on now that you're super excited about?
So at the moment, I've just finished my PhD, so I'm looking at writing up some papers. I mean, one of the papers I'm really excited about is kind of looking at gender differences in how others observe autism. So how non-autistic peers observe traits in autistic females and autistic males and the differences between those. And it's just really interesting because even though those two groups, autistic males and autistic females, didn't differ at all on any of our measures, they were still rated more favourably. The autistic females were rated more favourably because of their behaviour by the non-autistic peers. And I just think it's upsetting to think that our behaviours are viewed so negatively. But on the other hand, it's really interesting to see how easily people very quickly make these first impressions of us, mm-hmm. and how those differences are kind of, thought about by our non-autistic peers. So I think my next steps really are to really kind of hone in on that and work out why is it that our behaviours are viewed differently, and how can we translate that into kind of a better way of identifying mm-hmm. autistic females, and also a better way of supporting mental health for autistic females as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And then where can people read your research and the stuff that you've written and find out more about you?
So at the moment, the best place is probably Twitter, because that's where I post all my updated stuff. I did used to have a blog, but I don't have that at the moment. So Aspertypical is where I post most of my stuff. Anytime I've got anything published will be posted on there, and links and things to resources as well I publish on there too.
Mm-hmm. And also if you just Google her name, a bunch of stuff comes up. I'm trying to think of how I even found you. I feel like it was on a Google search, I believe. Yeah. Cause I kept kind of seeing your name because I saw someone on Instagram, this girl in her early 20s who received her diagnosis as an adult. And then she was talking about how so many women go undiagnosed. So then I think I started Googling that, and that's where I kept like kind of seeing your name kind of pop up.
Yeah. So I'm like, I think I just like to state, like, part for me is I love doing research, but it's not really worth anything unless you're sharing that with people. For me, it's about like the practical applications of that research, like who is that research helping? because most of the time if it gets published, it's not helping anyone. And so I've really enjoyed, and part of me discovering more about myself has been connecting with other autistic people and other people about what I've gone through. So yeah, there's quite a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. I know this has been a crazy time in everyone's life. So with the chaos, it's like you're on lockdown, but you still have things to do. But thank you so much for taking the time to be on and share with us.
No worries. Thank you.
I'm so glad that I got to connect with Hannah. She, like I said, she was in the UK, so finding a time, I'm so glad we were able to do it. But also being at home made it a little bit easier since, she's not out at work right now. But I'm so glad that she was able to come on. I learned so much from her. I'm so grateful for the time that people take to come on here and to share their expertise, their information, and to help us just learn and grow. I will have all the links to find her, to some of her papers and research for you guys if you want to read more about it. I found it super fascinating. Again, that's how I found her, was through researching and reading, and then seeing her name pop up and reading a little bit about her personal bio. And then I reached out to her. I DM'd her on like 4 different platforms trying to get her to come on. So I'm so glad that she was able to. I hope you guys are just enjoying time with your family and not driving each other too crazy, staying safe. And if you guys are enjoying these interviews, if you could just take 2 seconds to go on iTunes and rate and review. That's how iTunes knows people are really listening, and it helps get it out there and spread it so more people can see that the Miraculous Mamas podcast is out there. And we can reach more people and just grow our community of moms just trying to figure it out and do the best that we can. If you're not subscribed, also hit the subscribe button wherever you are listening. And don't forget to follow us at Miraculous Mamas on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, miraculousmamas.com. There's tons of blogs up there and information and research for you guys. If you're interested in becoming a mommy blogger contributor, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you. That's also where my week-by-week updates of the pregnancy are posted as well, on miraculousmamas.com. I love you guys so much, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.